Good evening, little curse breaker. Yeah, you. The glitch in the system, the crack in the cauldron. Let's talk about that spell they put on you. You know what's funny? Everyone acts like your life started when you started making choices. Like the moment you turned 18, boom, clean slate, all you. Your fault, your responsibility, your mess. But the truth is, by the time you were old enough to choose, they'd already spent 100 years stacking the deck against you. Not just your parents, not just your teachers. I'm talking about the witches behind them, the old patterns, the traditions, the broken belief systems passed down like a family heirloom nobody questions. Work this kind of job. Marry this kind of person. Don't talk about your feelings. Don't dream too big. Be realistic. Know your place. You think those sentences just appeared out of thin air? No. Those are spells, rituals, words repeated so many times they sink into your bones and start talking like they're you. And they've been brewing that potion for generations. Picture this for a second. Your great-grandparents swallow their pain and call it duty. Your grandparents swallow their dreams and call it sacrifice. Your parents swallow their identity and call it being a responsible adult. Each one of them a little more numb, a little more resigned, a little more chained to the same story. And every time they repeat those lines to their kids, the witch stirs the pot. One more stir, one more spell, one more layer of this is just how life is. By the time you show up, you're born into a script that's already written. Here's your role, here's your lines, don't improvise. And the crazy part is, they didn't even need a wand. They used guilt, they used shame, they used what will people think. They used, you think you're better than us. They turned your entire nervous system into a prison. Let's be honest, yeah? How many times have you felt something burning inside your chest? Some wild idea, some insane dream, some version of you that scared even you. And the first thing that showed up wasn't excitement. It was guilt. Who do you think you are? You can't do that. You're not that smart. You're not that special. You'll embarrass yourself. You know what that is? That's the spell talking. That's not your voice. That's a chorus of dead opinions wearing your thoughts like a mask. You've been possessed, not by demons, by beliefs. The witches didn't have to drag you to some cave. They turned your mind into the cave. Every time you wanted more, they whispered, selfish. Every time you wanted different, they whispered, ungrateful. Every time you wanted out, they whispered, you'll fail. They cursed you so well that you started cursing yourself for them. You walk into rooms and shrink. You talk to people and apologize for existing. You hold back your ideas like they're contraband. All because someone, somewhere, long before you, decided that people like you don't get to be free. And here's where it gets interesting, because despite all that, despite 100 years of brainwashing and emotional blackmail and subtle spiritual warfare, you broke it in 1 second. Now maybe you don't realize it yet, because when that moment happens, it rarely comes with fireworks and theme music. Sometimes it's just a quiet thought at 3 a.m. Sometimes it's a breakdown in your car after work. Sometimes it's that numb feeling where you stare at your own life and think, I can't do this anymore. Not I can't handle life. No. I can't handle living like this anymore. That sentence, that feeling, that silent explosion in your chest, that's the spell cracking. That's the first time your soul speaks louder than your programming. That's the second you became dangerous. Because once you see the bars of the cage, you can't unsee them. Once you realize, wait, this script isn't even mine, you start improvising. You start questioning things you were never supposed to touch. Why am I friends with people who drain me? Why am I still trying to impress people I don't respect? Why am I in this job that kills me slowly? Why do I keep apologizing for wanting more out of this life? You know how terrifying that is to the witches? For 100 years, they've trusted one thing, that you would be too tired, too scared, too conditioned to question the spell. They bet everything on you staying asleep, and then you woke up. Let me tell you something dark and beautiful. They can spend a century building an illusion, but it only takes one clear thought to shatter it. One decision, one no, one I don't believe that anymore, one I'm done playing small to make everyone else comfortable. Everyone thinks power is some big, dramatic, cinematic moment. But the most dangerous moment of your life is so small, it fits in a single breath. That moment where you decide, I refuse to live as the victim of this story. That's it. That's you snapping the wand in half. Of course, the witches don't just give up, right? The second you break the spell, what do? They panic. Suddenly, you've changed. You're selfish now. You don't care about the family. You think you're better than us. You're going to regret this. You're making a mistake. They're not worried about you being wrong. They're terrified you might be right. Because if your life proves there was another way, their entire excuse collapses. If you escape, then they have to admit they could have too. And nothing threatens a comfortable prisoner more than a free ex-prisoner. So what happens next? They double down. You start working on yourself. You get mocked. You start saying no more often. You get guilt-tripped. You distance yourself from toxic people. You become the bad guy. Congratulations. That's how you know you're in the right direction. Remember this. Spells scream the loudest right before they die. The resistance you feel now, it's not proof that you're wrong. It's proof that you're breaking generational code. You are rewriting a script that's been running on autopilot for a century. Of course it feels strange. Of course it feels lonely. You're the first one in your bloodline who's not playing dead. Let's talk about that loneliness for a second, because nobody warns you about that part, right? You start to wake up and suddenly, small talk feels empty. Old circles feel fake. Parties feel boring. Your phone feels heavier because you don't relate to half the people on it anymore. Everyone's still playing the same game. Look stable on the outside, rot quietly on the inside, and you're there like, yeah, I'd rather not. Now you could go back. You could shrink again. You could pretend you never saw what you saw, but you won't. Because once the spell breaks, even pretending hurts. So yeah, you feel like the weird one now. The problem child. The rebel. The black sheep. Good. Black sheep don't follow. Black sheep leave the flock and learn how to run. You know what the witches never accounted for? They thought fear would always beat pain. Keep them scared enough, and they'll stay. Scared of failing. Scared of being alone. Scared of being judged. But they forgot something. There comes a point where staying hurts more than leaving. There comes a day where waking up to the same life feels like dying. At that point, fear loses. Because yes, you're scared of changing, but you're terrified of staying the same. That's the moment. That's the second where something snaps inside you, where you decide, if I'm going to suffer either way, I'd rather suffer while I'm building something real. And that's what they didn't see coming. Let's get brutally real for a second. You didn't just break a witch's spell. You broke the "no one in our family ever does that" spell. The "just be happy with what you have" spell. The "we don't talk about mental health" spell. The "you'll never be enough" spell. The "stay small so we don't feel insecure" spell. You broke the curse of playing life on easy mode. Low risk, low reward, high regret. Every time you set a boundary, that's a crack in the spell. Every time you say, "No, I don't accept that," another piece falls off. Every time you choose a hard truth over a convenient lie, you're destroying 100 years of emotional architecture. And yeah, it's messy, it's chaotic, it's not pretty. But you were never born to be pretty. You were born to be actual. Let's talk about your mind. Because for years, they trained it to be a courtroom against you. Every thought you had was put on trial. "I want to quit this job." Verdict: irresponsible. "I want to cut off this toxic friend." Verdict: overreacting. "I want to rest." Verdict: lazy. "I want to start over." Verdict: unrealistic. They weaponized your own self-talk. They turned your inner voice into a witch's familiar. And then one day, you catch it. You notice the pattern. You hear yourself think, "I'm not allowed to want that." And for the first time you answer, "Says who?" That's a dangerous question, because when you trace that, "says who," back far enough, you realize it's not you. It's not logic. It's not reality. It's just old fear wearing new clothes. Once you see that, the spell loses half its power. You want to know the rest? The other half of the spell dies when you act in spite of the fear. Not when you feel ready. Not when everyone claps for you. Not when it's safe. No. The spell dies when you feel your heart pounding, your hands shaking, your mind screaming, "What if this goes wrong?" And you do it anyway. You send the application anyway. You cut the contact anyway. You start the project anyway. You leave the room anyway. You say, "I don't accept this anymore," anyway. You don't negotiate with the spell. You don't wait for its permission. You walk through it. That's how curses are broken. From the inside. Let's not romanticize it, though. Breaking this kind of spell, it costs you. You might lose people. You might lose comfort. You might lose old versions of yourself that once kept you alive. That shy kid. That people pleaser. That overachiever who thought being perfect would finally earn them love. They were part of the spell, too. And when you outgrow it, you grieve them. You grieve the time you lost, the years you lived half asleep, the dreams you buried so deep you forgot their names. But listen to me. Those years weren't wasted. They were pressure. All that pain, all that confusion, all those sleepless nights. They weren't proof that you were weak. They were the weight that made you strong enough to finally snap the chains. If you hadn't been crushed, you'd still be comfortable. If you were still comfortable, you'd still be cursed. You broke the spell because life squeezed you so hard, you had to either break or break out. And you chose the better option. Now here's the part nobody expects from you. They thought once you broke the spell, you'd just disappear. Maybe you'd survive. Maybe you'd quietly build a small life somewhere. But they never imagined you'd turn around and start speaking. They never imagined you'd become the voice they tried to kill in themselves. You're dangerous now because you're not just free. You're loud. Every time you tell the truth about what you've been through, You're breaking mini spells in people listening every time you say, "This is what happened to me. This is how I stayed numb. This is how I lied to myself. This is how I woke up." Someone else feels their chains rattle. You're not just a survivor. You're a walking, talking glitch in a 100-year curse. You're proof that it can be broken. And yeah, that's exactly why life still throws fire at you. You thought the spell being broken meant everything gets easy now. No, it means now you fight clean. Before, you were fighting blindfolded with your hands tied behind your back in a room you didn't even know you were in. Now, you see the walls, you see the ropes, you see the door. Doesn't mean it's effortless. It just means it's finally winnable. The thoughts still show up. The doubt still hits. The fear still whispers. But now, when that voice creeps in and says, "You're not enough. You're going to fail. Who do you think you are?" You don't automatically agree. You smirk. You recognize the accent. You think, there's the old spell again, trying one last time. And you move anyway. Let's bring this all the way home. The witch's spell wasn't fireballs and potions and broomsticks. It was unhealed parents, traumatized grandparents, systems built on fear, schools that teach obedience over creativity, religions used as chains instead of wings, jobs that drain your soul while calling it security, timelines that say if you're not married, rich, stable, and smiling by 30, you're a failure. They put all that in a pot, stirred it for 100 years, and poured it into your head the moment you were born. And still, somehow, you sat there one day in the middle of all that noise and you thought, no, something's wrong here. I don't know what the truth is yet, but I know it's not this. That was it. That was the second the spell shattered. Not because you had all the answers, not because you felt confident, but because you dared to doubt the lie. They wanted your doubt to turn on you. Instead, you turned your doubt on the script. Beautiful, isn't it? So, here you are now, halfway between who they raised you to be and who you're supposed to become. You feel everything more intensely now. You see everything more clearly. You're painfully aware of your patterns, your wounds, your triggers, and you think that's a bad thing. It's not. That sensitivity, that awareness, that rawness, that's your power coming back online. Numb people don't change worlds. Broken spell people do. You weren't meant to go back to sleep. You weren't meant to fit back into the old life. You're supposed to build something that never existed in your bloodline before. Self-respect, where there was only self-sacrifice. Boundaries, where there was only people-pleasing. Honesty, where there was only pretending. Freedom, where there was only fear. You are the plot twist they were never ready for. So yeah, the witch's spell took 100 years to build. It took a century of repetition, a century of fear, a century of, we've always done it this way. But you only needed one thing, 1 second of unbearable honesty with yourself. One moment where you said, I'm done living this lie. One instant where your soul chose truth over tradition.